Well, welcome back to the Healthy Christian Leader. We have Jay Guptill with us, a pastor for 40 years. He's now ministering in serving pastoral leaders in a ministry called Made for More. And Jay, it's so great to have you here. I loved the first half of our conversation. Looking forward to this half. And I want to jump right in and talk about what are some of the fundamentals in dealing with stress, or what activities can be helpful in dealing with stress?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think all of us have to find what works for us. I think there are some very easy, low-hanging fruit, if I can say it that way, of what are some basics. Well, so many times we overlook this and we think it's not that big of a deal. But I think there is a lot more to it. And that would be everything from how are we eating? Are we eating healthy? Are we doing good food groups? Are we not junking out late at night? How are we taking care of our body from a health perspective with eating and meals that are in our menu? That's one thing. Second thing is, are we exercising? Are we doing anything in the way of getting our blood flowing? Now, you don't have to be doing like high-end workouts, but can there be even some basic stretching or some short walks, but something to keep the blood flowing and to do it on a regular basis? That doesn't mean necessarily every day, but at least some consistency. What about sleep? Are we burning the candle at both ends, or are we actually saying, look, I'm getting those 8 hours or 7 to 9 hours, whatever works for you? Are we getting rest, and are you giving yourself permission to take a nap in the middle of the day if you know that's what I need most right now, and that's going to actually help me go forward? And then the other area would be, what about my spiritual rhythms? Am I actually in the Word and letting the Word get in me, and what's my rhythms with that? And when I think of those four areas, how we're eating, how we're exercising, how we're sleeping, and how we're in the Word, to me, those are they have an accumulative effect. You might not see from day one to day two the impact. You might go, well, there was no difference from yesterday to today. But you do that for a week, and you do that for a month, and you extend that over time, and all of a sudden you go, I'm just generally feeling
worn down and
better, or if I'm not doing it, I just feel kind of flat. Right. So I think those are easy go-to starts.
And it's interesting, they're such a fundamental, simple thing. Leaders may just brush that off.
Exactly.
But that's a foundational core.
It is.
And it's not always as easy as some people think it is to maintain.
It's so true.
And when you get to be, sages or the old folks in the crowd, I now have hearing aids, which is, I can't believe that's actually happened to me. Yeah. And that season of life has come. They say motion is lotion.
There you go.
To keep that limberness and so on, you have to keep moving. But all these simple things are about stewardship.
Yes.
They're really part of that big package of stewarding our lives properly. And sometimes we seem to just get so focused on a goal that we'll abandon everything for that one thing.
Yeah.
And when life is really about stewarding or balancing a number of roles, a number of baskets, and a number of elements of our life, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is true. And this is where somebody can start. I mean, I've talked with people over time who say are either facing burnout or who are now in a burnout season. And this is one of the areas where I start talking. Okay, kind of that general level of well-being. What has been in place, or what are you currently doing to start to regain your health? Right?
Do you often find that those fundamentals are out of place?
Oh, very much
when you find a person who's burned out?
Yeah. Oh, people will say, oh man, I'd be like, I'd grab a bag of chips at 9 o'clock at night and eat the bag or whatever, right? They
Right.
had their go-to food that was not good for them, or they just had stopped exercising, or their spiritual rhythms, their habits were like non-existent or had been so forgotten that they just weren't, adding any value to their life.
Tell me a little bit more about those spiritual rhythms for a pastoral leader. What do they look like? What should they look like?
Well, I think that's going to be based on the season of life. For example, younger families, younger couples, say with young children, that's a different type of responsibility than for someone like myself who is an empty nester. I don't have to arise in the morning and worry about not worry, but take on the responsibility of getting the kids up and getting them fed and getting them out the door. And so your mornings are a totally different schedule than they would be at this season of life. So I think there has to be an allowance for, okay, when do I fit in spiritual rhythms that are good for my soul? So when am I in the Word of God and letting that word soak into my life? When am I spending time in prayer? When do I have solitude? How do I have silence? Well, you may not be able to do that first thing in the morning because you're getting up and you have lots of responsibility on your plate, and the household is crazy busy. I remember when our boys were in their early teens, they had paper routes, and they had an early morning paper route, and we were up at 6, and the papers were outside, and we would get downstairs and organize the papers and get them in their paper bags, and out the door they would go. Well, then I would help with that. My wife was getting breakfast started because we committed we were going to have breakfast together as a family, because that was the time when we knew we could get everybody together, because once lunch and supper came along, too many other scheduled activities were coming.
Right.
So I'd come upstairs and help her get breakfast ready. In 20 to 30 minutes, each of the guys would start coming back in the door. And then we would sit at the table and have breakfast together. Well, we didn't have time at 6 a.m. to do devotions. We didn't have time at 7 a.m., but we sat together as a family, ate together, talked about the day, did a short devotional, prayed together, and then it was racing out the door to head for school and so on. Well, that was our rhythm at that time, but it wasn't the rhythm all the time. So I think we all have to find our rhythms as far as the core foundations of what we need to grow in and stay attuned to is, how are we in the Word? How are we in prayer? Are we listening? Are we developing a listening ear? I think one of the things that I have loved in the last, say, 10 years of my life when it comes to spiritual rhythms, a word that has meant a lot to me, and I've shared it a lot too, and that is anticipation. Am I anticipating meeting with God? To the point that the night before, am I like, when I awake in the morning, I can't wait to spend time with Jesus. I'm anticipating it. So when I wake up, it's not like, oh, here we go again. It's more like, I can't wait, and I'm looking forward to it. And that mind shift was huge for me, because it was like, it was more than just a routine or a duty or an obligation. It was an enjoyment. It was a relationship to be developed. And what could I discover new? So that was a big shift for me that I've found other people have found, like, wow, never really thought of that, but it is helpful. So those would be things that I think are helpful for those spiritual rhythms.
That's excellent. Very, very good. It's easy for a leader to feel like everyone's watching you, and your denomination, your colleagues, your congregation, and at times they are watching you.
Yeah, sure.
In this kind of environment, how do leaders find a safe place to process their needs and their hurts, because they happen, and sin?
Yeah. Well, there is obviously a public part of ministry. You can't get away from it. If you're a leader, there is going to be an aspect of some level of public life. So people will watch and see. I mean, some of it is, if I hate that people are watching me, then maybe we need to look at the reality of it. Am I in the right fit?
Right.
Am I doing the thing that God's called me to? Because if I recognize part of leadership is being in the public eye, then that's something to be aware of. I think the Apostle Paul, he was the one that said, I want you to watch me. So, well, that was kind of interesting because it's like there is an example actually.
Come follow me as I follow Christ.
Yeah. So there shouldn't be a surprise that people are watching us, right? But then we are able to show or model healthy living. So instead of thinking I'm in a fishbowl and everybody's looking at me and critiquing me, could it be, again, a mind shift of, you know what, like I can actually reveal that if I'm working on something or struggling with something, it's okay that I go and get help and that I let people know that I'm getting help.
Now, there's appropriate ways of sharing with a congregation what we're struggling with and inappropriate ways.
Right.
But a level of transparency actually gives permission for others to struggle.
Yes, exactly.
And the reality is we all do.
Yeah.
And I think when the pastor presents himself as, perfect or basically a finished product rather than, someone who, like everybody else, is in process with God, it doesn't really give that freedom for the congregation the same way, does it?
It doesn't, yeah. And I have seen over the years when there's a good, healthy way that you've shared it with your congregation that, hey, I'm in a season or I'm in a time where I'm working on things or I'm struggling a bit, there is lots of support.
Yeah.
People are like, we're praying for you. Thank you for sharing that. That helps give me a sense that I'm not alone.
Well, and it just creates a safety that, hey, my pastor is struggling and journeying towards Christ, and he's discovering, and I want to know what he's discovering as well. Yeah. And it goes from this fishbowl experience to a little bit healthier experience of we're journeying together.
Yeah, that's right. I'll come back to your original question. I think there are times, however, we need to be wise. There are some congregations that are not overly healthy. And when we share openly, it actually goes against us. They kind of critique and find fault.
Right.
Well, we have to be wise then and say, you know what, maybe this isn't the safest place to share too deeply, right?
Don't cast your pearls before swine.
Right.
Not that we're calling our congregation swine, but
no, I get it. I think as well, if I can say this in all respect, there are some pastors who as well are not safe.
Right.
We might think, I'm sharing this with you in confidence or with the belief that, you get it, you understand what I'm going through. And then all of a sudden, they're telling it to other people. So I think wisdom is look for the evidence. Is this person trustworthy?
Yes.
Is this congregation trustworthy?
Yeah.
If you see, no, that's not been good. People have shared things and it's come back to bite them. Or they've talked to another pastor and now they're hearing that pastor, or you've seen that pastor and they're talking about somebody else's stuff. You go, they're not safe, right? So part of safety is wisdom, discernment, a trust that, okay, this person I believe is going to be trustworthy. Now, with that, of course, in my field, because of being a counselor, one of the things that I believe and uphold because I value it so much myself, and I believe others do as well, is confidentiality, anonymity. So, when there's a point where if you can find a good counselor or a confidant or a coach that not only has ethical guidelines that say this is to be upheld, but they have a track record that they don't talk. They're not sharing what they have experienced with others, then you go, okay, that's someone that I think I can open up to. So if in my public life, I'm working on something, or I'm doing my leadership, but in my private life, I'm struggling and I don't know where to go, there are safe places. There are people, and you may just have to search a bit and ask around a little bit, but know that there are good people that you can offload your burden and they can walk with you to help you find health and wholeness.
When do you know it's time to step down as a leader? That's an interesting question.
That is, yeah. That's a good question, and I don't know there's a silver bullet answer, right? One answer will help you to know. I mean, the global top level answer is God says so. He says, hey, I'm releasing you from here and I have a new assignment for you. I think there's couple of other things that come to mind. Number one would be, do I still have a voice? Do people still look to me and respect my leadership? Or is it becoming more and more aware I'm not actually leading?
Yes.
I'm not actually having a voice anymore. And it just seems like it's constant tension and critiquing and pointing out things that are wrong. And we're all going to have those kinds of moments, but if that's continual, it's probably time to take a look. Have I lost my voice? Have I lost that place of leadership with this congregation? And is it time for me to do the courageous thing and just, move forward, right? So that could certainly be an important decision about when it's time to leave. I think another one that I would encourage pastors to really think through and pray through, and that is, when I came to the church, I had a certain perspective of what I was coming into. We all put on a good front. When, a pastor or a leader who's coming to a church puts on their best, sermon and puts their best foot forward, a church does the same thing. Oh, we want you to be a person of change. We want you to, lead us into the future. And then you get there and you begin to see, this isn't what I was expecting. And then it just seems like we're not a fit. As a pastor and my leadership, my style, the way I want to go forward, the way I feel God's designed me, and this congregation, this church, we're drifting apart. And it just seems like we're not on the same page. We're not in alignment. I think at some point, a pastor has to be willing to say courageously, this is more than just a job. This is more than just a paycheck. Or this is more than just, uprooting my family once again. At some point, it's like, we're not a good match. Ultimately, we're not. And I've got one life to live. God's got my life to use. He'll definitely grow me through this, but is this the right fit for me? And if over time, again, through counsel, through wisdom, through processing, it's like, I got to make the decision, no, this is not for me, and I need to move on. So I think sometimes you just have to be honest with yourself. It's not a good fit. So those would be a few thoughts that come to mind when is it time to move on?
Jay, this has been such a helpful conversation. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation. We're going to be talking about pornography and how it connects and gets rooted sometimes in the hearts of leaders and what they can do about that.
Right.
So we'll look forward to our next time with Jay. Thank you for joining us on the Healthy Christian Leader Show, and we will see you next time. Well, thanks for joining this conversation. I trust that you were encouraged and challenged by the stories and experiences that were shared today. Would you join us next week? You can find new episodes weekly in video form on the Aaron Ministries YouTube page and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leadership. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more information and resources and on how you can donate to our ministry and potentially start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Until we meet again, may you experience the Lord's blessing, grace, and peace. I'll see you next week.